the fact, as you can see here, Ryan's foot remains on the inside almost at all times because he's left hand dominant in a lot of his attacks. His looping left hook, his his left jab, but the power jab that he exudes, everything pretty much comes from the left hand side. So he would rather use that hand to be lined up and level with his opponent. Which is why more time than not you always see his lead foot on the inside of the southpaw stance and trying to put it to the outside. But it works for him. It's not something that most other people would do against a southpaw, but it's something that seems to work for him. He baited Fortuna in on several occasions, forced Fortuna to have to reach in, being the smaller guy. And one thing he does have is very quick hands. He's very good. He's very good at sort of slipping a overextended shot and then catching the counter with the left hook, as you just saw there in the footage, and as you're about to see him do again just before Fortuna goes down. So, I mean, it was a fairly decent performance from Ryan. I'm fairly comfortable with it. What about you? What do you think?
Okay, so I think the biggest takeaway from me is the weight issue. Because like yourself, I expected this to be a bona fide lightweight contest. Javier Fortuna, his best fights have all been at super feather. In no way did I expect to see this fight at super lightweight. So 140 was just, for me, a real shock on the day of the scales. I understand it was at the behest of Fortuna, but it looked like it benefited Ryan Garcia way better than it did Fortuna. And that makes sense because obviously Ryan is a much bigger guy. He's taller. His last fight was at super lightweight. So it makes sense that, you know what, I'm not having to strip myself down to the bone in order to accomplish something. And obviously, post-fight, we hear him say, "That's it. I'm good to go. I'm happy at this weight class. I no longer want to invest myself in trying to make lightweight." So that, to me, is the biggest takeaway from the fight. From a technical perspective of the fight itself, you pretty much nailed it. I will say this. Look very carefully at Ryan's footwork prior to launching punches, because he doesn't punch and move at the same time. He sets his feet very carefully before he lets his shots go. And as a result of the way he does that, he misses a lot of shots. He misses a hell of a lot of shots. And, look, I'm going to throw 4 shots, 2 of which will miss you, but the last 2 will hit you. And the last 2 will do damage. So I look at Ryan and I think to myself, here's a kid, because he's still a kid, he's still very young, who hasn't quite found himself in terms of being a monster at lightweight, now finds himself at super lightweight with other killers, where you can go, I'm not so sure if all that bravado and that machismo actually can endear him to become the super lightweight king. We already know there's been a guy there that turned over the division. But when you look at the other guys, based on Josh Taylor, losing and removing titles, there's no easy ride for Ryan Garcia to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to take over this division instead. So, to me, he's walked into a lot more danger than he could ever dream of. And that's before you even bring Tank Davis into the equation. Because Tank Davis, to me, is by no way the most dangerous guy at 140. Yeah? I love Tank Davis. Anybody who knows me knows how high I accredit Tank Davis. But I'm no fool. His divisions have been super featherweight and lightweight. And although he has a credible victory, although it doesn't include a credible title at super lightweight, to me, he's not the daddy of that division. He's far from it. And as a result, Ryan Garcia is picking way more than he can chew, but he's obviously doing I'm moving up, but I want Tank. Because he kind of knows, well, this ain't really Tank's division. Notice he don't come out and call the killers. So I'm going to take this weekend's win over a faded Javier Fortuna and go, congratulations, well done. You did what you had to do. You did what we expected you to do. I don't think anybody expected Javier Fortuna to do anything but create mischief and cause this fight to go a little bit longer than maybe it should do. But yeah, I mean, as far as Ryan Garcia in the super lightweight or the light welterweight division is concerned, that's a division where he can run into a lot of problems very, very quickly. So,
I mean, I'd agree, but I'd also say just look what we saw. We saw him against Fortuna, whose best days was at super featherweight. Prior to that, Emmanuel Tagoe, his best times was also at super feather in his last fight, which was at a catch weight above 135. What's to say that Ryan doesn't, in his next fight, decide to fight Jojo Diaz and bring him up from 135 up to 140? I mean, right? Remember, you've got to remember one thing about both Ryan and Tank Davis, right? Both of them essentially at this point are almost adjacent to the rest of the world of boxing. Neither of them are worried about belts and ceremony to some degree. Ryan's already said belts mean nothing to him. Tank said to George Kambosos, I don't care about your belts, when George Kambosos had them. So realistically, there's nothing that could genuinely stop them from fighting people from lower divisions and just bringing them up if they've got a credible enough name that you can maybe sell a few tickets with. So while the division itself is a very dangerous division for Ryan Garcia, that doesn't mean that he's actually going to compete with the people in that division, especially not for now. So it's gonna be interesting moving forward. He said that, you know, if he can't get Tank, then he wants Teofimo Lopez, but ultimately he's calling out two people that are on quote unquote other sides of the street to where he's at. So the chances of either of those fights being made next for him, he knows they're probably slim to none. I'm not saying he wouldn't take them, but I think it's what do they call it when you call someone out, you're basically riding someone else's wave. You mention someone else's name to sell a potential fight with them and then switch them out with someone else afterwards. It could be that type of situation. I guess we just got to kind of wait and see what happens moving forward.
So yeah, I mean, Bafor says Ryan Garcia ain't fighting Tank next. Watch, and Ryan Garcia is overrated. I'm not saying he's overrated. I'm just saying he ain't the king. He ain't the king of lightweight, and he definitely ain't the king of the super lightweight or light welterweight. And as a result, you know, it's going to be interesting. I understand what you're saying, Base, in regards to him bringing people up. I personally don't think you can run that I'm not challenging for titles shit for too long. Seriously. I mean, I know we're in the age of the RuPaul and the Frankie Paul, and as Spencer Fearon likes to say, the Paul brothers. But I seriously believe you can only ride that train for so long if your name ain't a Paul.
What about Tank? I mean, he's not in any rush to fight for belts or legitimate ones anyway.
Same applies. The same applies to Tank. The difference with Tank is at least you went out and got 3 Reggie belts. And I say this to people all the time. In the annals of history, people will continue to say Tank was a freeweight world champion. It's unfortunate that people recognize the Reggie belt as a formal world title, but it is what it is. And, you know, say what you like, in the annals of history, and especially to the casual, they're still saying Tank Davis, freeweight world champion. And the thing is, Ryan Garcia is a no weight, no title world champion. How long can you ride with that if you're the so-called king?
Yeah, we'll see. Speaking of that card, before we even talk about any of the other fights, I want to make sure if anyone hasn't watched it, please watch Oscar Collazo versus Vic Saludar, which came on the before the bell portion or whatever Golden Boy will call that part. It was like the main event of that particular card. Like it was, yeah. If you haven't watched it, just watch it. I'm not even gonna do it much justice, but
no,
trust
go
me,
on, do it, because I've got some clips for you.
Oh, you got some clips for me?
I haven't got clips. Sorry, I just got pictures. Sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. Right. So this fight here was, to me, my fight of the night. It was basically, you've got Oscar Collazo, 4-0 at the time. Pretty extensive amateur background. It was at minimum weight, so the really small guys. But he was taking on Vic Saludar, who I believe was something like 24-5-1 or some kind of range like that. He's Filipino, and and Collazo was Puerto Rican. So it was tale of styles. You had Saludar fighting from the fighting from the southpaw stance, and you had Saludar fighting from the orthodox, and you had Collazo fighting from the southpaw. Now within the fight, initially, Collazo for the first couple of rounds just could not get to grips with that southpaw, with sort of the orthodox from the southpaw stance. He was getting timed into jabs, walking flush onto them, but it looked like he was trying to apply smart pressure. So it looked like he was prepared to take damage early in order to get himself forward and get himself into the chest of Saludar. But Saludar was picking him off, but he was being made to work. So you could see that as it went to sort of rounds 3 and 4, you could see that it was starting to the pace was starting to show slightly, ever so slightly, and then Collazo was able to start getting his work off, and he was starting to connect to some decent shots, but nothing major that was troubling Saludar at that point. But he was investing quite a bit into the body work, which was a main point for him, and that started to pay dividends around round 6, to the point where in round 7 he steps in to Saludar and hits him with a left hook to the body, and Saludar backs up onto the ropes, and he gets hit again, and he folds over, and the ref jumps in to get it was a female ref that was in the ring, to give him a standing 8 count rather than to let the fight carry on or be waved off. So Saludar says, "I'm fine." He carries on through to the round, and then less than 20 seconds after that, Collazo comes in trying to finish him just towards the center of the ring, and Saludar manages to sneak a very, very sneaky uppercut in and catches Collazo and knocks him down as well. So both guys end up getting counted down in the 7th. And then after that, it was literally a war of attrition between both guys, fighting on both the inside and the outside. So Saludar also getting hurt to the body again. I believe it was in round 10, but he managed to survive that one and not get counted. Finally, sort of towards the end of the fight, Collazo manages to finally he ends up getting the victory. I think it was a unanimous decision, but it was definitely a fight that proved, sort of that hungry young lion against the old veteran, and can you sort of, can you last? Are you good enough for this level? Or is this your? And it was an eliminator, I believe, for the minimum weight WBA championship. So Collazo definitely earned his place at the end of this fight. But yeah, like I said, if you guys haven't seen it, please watch it, because it was to me, it was the best fight on the card, hands down. I'm not sure. I think Tony's doing something in the background there. So let me go check the chat real quick. I'll watch this fight tomorrow. Yeah, definitely fight fan. I promise you, you will not be disappointed by that fight. Promise you, 100%. Junior Ekenyemi, it's funny. Devin is being marginalized by Ryan and Tank and has all the belts. These sort of big name fighters kill boxing. Definitely agreed. But the good thing about it is, Junior, at the end of the day, people know Devin, whether these guys want to act like he's not important or whatever. Like, Devin just fought in front of like 1.4 million people on ESPN, getting the undisputed title. So now no one can say who is Devin. Like, he's got people that know his name, plus they know that he's legit the number one guy, or at least the guy you have to beat in the division. So and Devin's got plenty of options, whether he decides to hang out at 135 for another couple of fights, which personally I don't want him to do. But if he decides that he can do it now with a better nutritionist, he's got those options. He's got that Loma option. He's got a Tank option if Tank decides that he really wants some decent work. He's got a Kambosos rematch, which no one really particularly wants to see. But again, he's got more options than both of those other guys put together for credible fights, and to not have to worry about them. So it's not something I'd worry too much about at this point. But yeah, it is weird how neither of these guys have seen any of the champions, but yet feel like they are the guys to beat in the division, or all roads lead to them, when, as far as I'm concerned, neither's done anything to make them that guy. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I tend to agree with you. Devin is the daddy right now, so all roads lead to Devin. If you ain't talking about Devin in your mouth and you're a lightweight, then you ain't shit, in my estimation, because he's the guy. And unless you're willing to step into his room and challenge him, then you ain't nothing. Okay. So we've done two good fights from the the American side of the waters, so to speak. Let's talk about the UK side. So Saturday night saw a decent fight on BT Sport, Frank Warren's Queensbury Promotions, headlined by Hamza Shiraz against Torres. I can't remember what strap that was for. There was some decent undercard action as well. Where do you want to start, my guy?
Let's start with Lennox Clarke and Mark Heffron.
Okay, so go ahead. Or do you want me to start?
No, sir, I did. So I haven't watched the entire fight, but I've seen enough of it to kind of know my thoughts on how it kind of went. To be honest, I think Lennox Clarke came out in this fight extremely cold. He didn't really seem like sort of fully warmed up and acclimatized to what was going on, because from the very first shot he kind of got hit with sort of really started to buckle him and trouble him. Maybe he was too amped up, so the adrenaline was causing him not to be able to actually be fully composed. But the good thing that Mark Heffron did in this fight, and I noticed that every time he's had success, it always started with him jabbing with Clarke and punching as he punches, rather than trying to slip and counter and catch him on the outside or anything like that. He was literally, as soon as Clarke would throw a shot, Heffron would throw a shot at the exact same time, and that's what seemed to be catching Clarke, because it was doubling up the impact. and every time, and that was sort of what was seeming to trouble him before you started going into more inside work, where Mark Heffron would start to unload on his uppercuts or his left hooks, and his right hooks as well, and sort of keeping everything like on the, you know, on the short sharp side on the inside. Clarke's feet never looked fully set. He never looked fully comfortable. So yeah, and then he went 5 rounds overall. Heffron had the better work throughout the majority, sort of rounds 1, round 3, and round 4. But I know that Lennox Clarke had a very, very big second round where he rallied back from a bit of issues and trouble that he had in round 1, where it thought like he might even end up getting stopped in the first, to coming back with some really heavy-handed overhand rights towards Heffron. Also a big swinging, it was like a corkscrew uppercut that he caught Heffron with as well. It was just a very overall, it was like a very sort of a very slugfest, like attritional type fight for the 5 rounds. But Heffron was definitely getting the better of the work. And then obviously we have the controversy with whether it was stopped too early by the referee. That is, you know, maybe something that I will let you discuss for now. Maybe in the chat you guys could say whether or not you thought that it was stopped too early, or it was stopped at, you know, at the right time. But yeah, overall I thought that was a pretty good fight from what I saw. I will be keen to sort of see the full thing when I get a chance.
So I did watch the whole fight, and I watched it from the beginning. This was a fight which Lennox Clarke was always struggling to get back into. Following the first round, and it looks like Heffron had his number from the very first round. It looked like Lennox was very lucky not to get a standing 8 count. If there was such a thing as a standing 8 count anymore, he probably would have got it. But yeah, that first round was pain for Lennox Clarke. Heffron came out. He looked very assertive. He used combination work. He moved his head and created angles very early on in this first round, and started teeing off on Lennox Clarke. And the difference to me is quite simply speed. Heffron's speed of punch was too much for Lennox Clarke. Lennox Clarke is a guy who's got heavy hands, but he's got to land in order for him to be effective. If you outwork him, or if you work at a speed that negates his natural inability to counter very quickly, then you're going to beat Lennox Clarke. And that's what Heffron had. He came out, dominated from the get-go, put Lennox Clarke in a lot of problems in the first round, and basically from then on, Clarke was struggling. He can't, to his credit, the second round, I expected Heffron to knock him out. But Clarke came back and he made a fight of it. And I got to give, you know, a lot of props to Lennox Clarke for coming back in that second round and making what looked like a quick 2-round blowout turn into an actual decent fight. But even though he made efforts to try and close the distance, get off his overhand right, he was no match. He was no match. And eventually, the class took over. The speed of Heffron, the accurate punching, you know, it was just a case of when, not if. And eventually, Mark Heffron was able to take out Lennox Clarke. But it was a fun fight while it lasted. I enjoyed that fight.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Okay.
So the next one on that would have been the Hamza Shiraz fight against Francisco Torres.
Okay, let me interject. Let me interject quickly. Did you watch the McCann beach fight?
I've seen bits of it. Not the whole thing, but I've seen bits.
let me give my rundown on that fight, because again,
Go
this
ahead.
was a fight I watched on from start to finish, and I feel I've got to give him a little bit of props because the kid looks good. But you know how you said to me last week you could see the flaws in Kiefer Ijako?
Yeah.
I see the same thing in Dennis McCann. Dennis McCann looks mustard against guys like Beach Jr. He come out, he looks really very composed. He picks beautiful shots. He's in and out. He's literally just teeing off on this kid. But he's, at the same time, he does take a shot from time to time. And you got to go, when you get to the elite level fighters in his weight class, you can't take those shots. You will be found out very, very quickly at the higher levels of the sport. But I just thought I'd give you my rundown of that particular fight. As I said, I thought it was a decent little scrap. Nice to see a current prospect maintaining his O and going on to what should be bigger and better things.
Yeah, salute to him. Salute to Dennis McCann.
So that brings us on to the Hamza Shiraz Torres fight.
So, this fight, I mean, Torres didn't particularly. I think he felt like he was kind of overmatched before the fight started. His body language, his demeanor. There was nothing about him in the fight that said to me he was here to even go rounds with Shiraz. To be honest, it felt like he just sort of, he felt that the task was over him from the very beginning, and that's the way his body language kind of showed to me. To his credit, I mean, he was fairly tough for, what was it, 4 rounds that the fight lasted? Was it 4?
Was it 4? Was it more?
It might have been more than that.
I think it was.
Someone in the chat will probably tell us. But yeah, going back to that, like he was out jabbing Torres quite consistently. Every time Torres was throwing out lazy jabs, whereas Shiraz's jab was very hard, very fast, and very precise. His backhand, the backhand was strong. It was pretty much finding the target at will as well. There was not really a huge amount that Shiraz did wrong, except for after he got his first knockdown, he decided to forgo all boxing sense and walk in on his opponent with no defense and no regard for his opponent's power. So it was 5 rounds. Okay, yeah, so 1 round extra. And as a result, Hamza Shiraz ends up getting knocked off his feet for, I believe, the first time in his pro career. It was, as much as it was a flash knockdown, it was also a heavy shot that put him to the ground as well. So that is something that he's gonna have to keep an eye on moving forward. He's got to remain switched on, and he can't take any opponent for granted, because realistically, this is the lowest level he's now going to be facing again moving forward. So if you've got someone at this level putting you down on the ground like that, that's not going to bode well for you as you step up to sort of like, the higher levels in the division. So yeah, that defense has got to stay tightened up at all times. He's got to remain he's got to remain switched on, can't have lapses of concentration. But overall I feel like he's still going to be a decent prospect, and it will be keen to see sort of what he manages to do from there. But what was your thoughts on that fight?
So yeah, I'm a big fan of Hamza Shiraz. Obviously last year he was fighter of the year, got a squeaky win over Bradley Skeet late in the year, December. But I'm a big fan of the kid. I like his style. I think he's very good in the use of his length. because he's a tall guy at his weight. He uses that very well. He's heavy-handed, but has good boxing pedigree. This fight to me was one of those step-up fights. You know, the opponents are getting slightly more difficult, and yeah, you know, he did a good job. But for that flash knockdown that occurred in the third round, you know, he was totally dominant, and obviously, you know, was able to get up off the floor, which, you know, you always are keen to see what are guys like when they get knocked down, and he showed some championship quality by getting up, even though I don't think he was really that hurt. But hey, he got up and he did what he had to do, and he did it in a very elegant and non-wasteful fashion. So long may it continue. I mean, you know, what would be interesting is where do we see him going from here? Because, you know, he's not in a division with little guys. There's a lot of guys in that division that, you know, could cause him a lot of pain. Where do you see him going next?
It's 168, right?
Yeah.
I'm not particularly sure, because if we look at,
it's 160. 160.
Is he 160? Okay,
yeah.
I was about to say, yeah, with 168, the only place you've kind of got after that is someone like Lerone Richards, and he's not of that level. But if we're at 160, I think the next fight I think would be a good fight for him would be taking on Linus Udofia. While I think Linus would be way too much for him, if he gets through that, then he's definitely at that British level to then possibly fight, you know, to fight Denzel Bentley after that. Because, I mean, he's not going to get any matchroom fighters or any probably like Hennessy fighters or Wasserman. And realistically, in that division, yeah, you're going to try and keep everything as in-house as possible. So while Linus Udofia isn't one of theirs, I feel like he will probably be, that would be like a credible guy. He could do that on the cheap, and it would be someone that they might predict he's not too much danger of getting beat by. Although to me, I think that's a very dangerous fight for him, and I would actually pick Udofia to win that. But yeah, if it's not him, then he might just go straight into the Bentley fight. Probably, which I think, like I said, keeping it all in house. He's got the British title. It makes sense for that to kind of be his next fight. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is, and then sort of we just see what happens from there. To be honest.
Yeah. So yeah, those are good fights. I think. Fight Fan TV, Danny, has given us Anthony Fowler in the mix. I don't know if Anthony Fowler wants any piece of Hamza Shiraz.
It's that, but also again, that's Matchroom. So are they really going to do the cross promotional thing?
You know Probably what? Not. We're seeing more and more cross promotional stuff. The thing I've always wanted to say this. I give my props to Eddie, because even though he signs guys up, he ain't afraid to say, you know what, I'll let you have a fight over on another platform if the fight makes sense. Obviously, he doesn't want that to happen too much. But I think Eddie is one of the few guys in boxing who is willing to allow his fighters to say, if the right fight comes up, I'll let you move. I'll let you take the other side of the floor and, you know, fight on another platform, and we'll come and see you again when the time is right. That's my feelings. I just think Eddie's a little bit more forthright than most other promoters in the game right now.
Yeah, I can give you that. In terms of, Ash said that not that one. It's a good point. I do think he's kind of basic, but I feel like he's pretty well with his basics. So, but when Ash says, "Oh, he'll let his disposable fighters go," Fowler is one of them. I agree, he'll let them go, but I don't think he would like allow Fowler to have a Shiraz fight while he's technically still under Matchroom, because the last thing he wants is Frank Warren saying that, yeah, well, my guy beat up a Matchroom fighter. So I think he'd have to already be off the roster before that happens. I don't think while someone is under the banner, he's going to feed them to one of Frank's prospects, unless they're one of his big prospects as well that he really thinks is a 50-50. And then Frank probably wouldn't take it anyway, because he's not that way inclined to do any work with Matchroom unless his guy's the overwhelming favorite.
Cool. All right.
Before we get off of that card, you got to give a big shout out to Nick Ball, because he actually I can't remember the name of the African guy that he fought, but I was watching that fight earlier on as well. He's definitely a little pocket rocket, and he had a very, very good performance on the weekend as well, and even managed to get the 12th round stoppage from a very, very tough and sort of durable African, who eventually turned his back in the final round, said, "Oh, can't take any more," and the ref obviously jumped in to wave it off. But no, just wanted to give a quick shout out to Ball as well.
Cool. So that really
Congololo. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Declan, or something along those lines.
So that deals with all the boxing from the weekend just gone. This weekend we're starved. We literally have one fight card that I know of, and that fight card has no one that I really want to see.
Whose card is it?
Joey Lopez or Joey Gonzalez. Is
that the one on Thursday?
Is that it? Could be.
Okay.
I know I looked at the schedule this week and I was like, nah, there's nothing. There's nothing going on that I would literally want to sit down and go, yeah, I'm going to spend some time watching this.
That's fair. So I guess next week.
So Thursday, you got Steve Rolls against Shady Gamhor in Toronto.
Wait, isn't the Oscar Rivas card this weekend in Canada? Cecilia Breakhouse against Patricia Begault, and Hannah Gabriels is on the. I think that Oscar Rivas card is this weekend. See if you can double check.
Okay. Just give me a sec.
Because if that card is on, that'll definitely be worth talking about next week. If not, then either we can have a free week, or we can end up just doing fantasy breakdowns next Tuesday. Both of which is fine with me. See if anyone else in the chat knows when that Oscar Rivas card is.
Yeah, so Saturday night, Joey Gonzalez against Isaac Dogbo. That is it, bro. Yeah,
okay.
There's nothing else going on this week. Jarrell Miller fights against Derek Cardenas. Yeah, that's it, bro.
Okay, well, we'll work it out backstage as to whether or not we even do anything for next week.
Yeah,
I guess you can't have a breakdown show with nothing to break down, but we'll see. we'll see what happens.
We will indeed. So the talk of the week seems to be this little fight that is being chalked up at the moment.
Oh, and I think you owe me an apology there, Tony.
Oh, please explain.
Because if you remember, about, what was it, maybe between 8 to 10 weeks ago, so that's a full training camp, we had the discussion about this fight on Monday Night Smoke. And you said when I was speaking about this fight and how it could play out, and I said, look, if Conor Benn can get Chris Eubank in on a catch weight, he's got a good enough chance to beat him. And you said it was crazy talk. There was no point even having the conversation because the fight would never ever happen, and Chris is way too big for Conor. Well, where's the talk now? I'm gonna need an apology, big man.
I'm gonna get this right. I'm gonna say it with all my chest. I apologize.
Well, glad to hear.
There's no doubt in my mind. This fight has no reason why this fight should ever be made. But if they can manage to do it, I know there are some hurdles that they're trying to overcome. But if they do, I'll be excited to watch it. I've had a conversation already with a couple of guys to say, you know, who would I pick? Well, back in the original Dad's Day, and let's make this right. This is Creed, the movie, coming true. Yeah?
Right.
Imagine that. Creed, the movie. The thing that we thought, wow, funny, isn't that funny how Rocky and Creed, this, you know, as it happens to be, it's Creed and Drago sons would be fighting for honors. And here we have it. I was always a Chris Eubank Sr. fan over Nigel Benn every day.
Okay.
I boxed in arenas with Nigel Benn. I literally was on like in places when he was boxing as an amateur and I was boxing as an amateur. I used to watch this kid and I used to think, fucking hell, this guy's dangerous. And to this day, one of my favorite boxing ABA finals is Nigel Benn against Rod Douglas. Two Jamaicans against each other. Far down. Talk about war. It was war. And it was proper war because, of course, Nigel is flying the flag. He's flying the British Army flag. And Rod Douglas is like, you know, am I proper yardie, you know? When I am yardie, man, you know? Mash up, man. I want to bring your British soldier, man, come. So yeah, that was a thing for me. For which I always tell people this to this day. I'm like, man, if you saw the guys that I was running around when I was boxing, you'd understand why I never turned pro. Because I always thought to myself, well, boy, I was all right where I was in my little section. But when it came to them world titles, the British champions, those guys were different. And for those people who wondered why I never turned pro, there was a guy in my gym by the name of Michael Shaka Ayers. He would go on to become an IBO world champion. He was British champion. He was Southern area. He was English champion. He fought 2 fights against a guy called Wayne Rigby. And they were both fight of the year. But Michael was the guy. He was 3-time ABA champion in the same years that James Oyebola won ABAs. And those times we used to support Michael at the ABA finals.
Tony, sorry, just to cut you off, just before you carry on, I'm listening, but it says that my phone is overheating. So if I drop out, we're gonna have to cut the stream. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, Nigel Benn was a guy that I feared, literally feared. So I was always a Chris Eubanks guy. I remember seeing him at York Hall fighting as a young professional, you know, single-digit fights, and thinking, wow, this kid is good. And obviously he went on to dominate his division. Certainly was the better of the 2 boxers for me, but Nigel's heart was undeniable. And this fight with the 2 sons, it just brings back the pain of the 2 guys. So we've lost base. So I'm just going to finish off the show. Excuse me. But yeah, you know, the 2 sons, I rate the Benn son better than the Eubank son. But it's for me, it's a difficult thing to come to terms with. When you love one guy, you love one guy's dad way more than the other guy's dad, but you like the other son more than the other son. So for me, it's going to be a difficult one. Faces Nokia is over here. Fight Fan TV, yeah, you remember Ayers versus Rigby. Nigel Benn is Bajan, not Jamaican. Okay, yeah. Jarrell Miller this weekend, yeah, we got that. Osborne, thoughts on Santa Cruz being ordered to fight Lee Wood? They could order as much as they like. It ain't happening. I personally can't see Leo Santa Cruz going to fight at that weight ever again. You know, when was the last time my man fought at that lightweight, that weight division? MC Tasty says, I watched your second fight in a pub in Cork City. But yeah, you know, yeah, for me, I'm invested in Nigel Benn's son, Conor Benn, but I am also a great fan of Chris Eubank, and so I got the feelings for the Eubank name. So it's a difficult one, but it will be interesting should it take place. I got to say, should it take place, because as I said, there are still a few hurdles to overcome. But if they can overcome those hurdles and they make this fight, then hell yeah, you best believe some of us are going to turn up and watch that fight live. And if we can't be in the venue, then you know what, there's going to be a watch along, because like the Amir Khan versus Kell Brook, this fight is going to stir the interest of the British public, and not least because the two dads will be in the corners, you know, making all kind of histrionics in order to sell this fight to the British public. So, guys, thank you very much for joining us on this hot evening. So hot that, you know, look, I've come out the pool and I'm sat in this, I feel like I'm sat in the sauna, but there has been rain while I've been sat here. And obviously, Base's phone has overheated to the point that he's had to drop out the stream. But thank you, everybody, for joining us, and hope to see you guys again very quickly. If you don't already, jump onto Base's YouTube account, and he's on Insta, on his Twitter. Details are all coming on the TikTok below. Don't forget hit that like button. I'm not sure if there'll be a pod this week with Travis and KG. KG's the jet setter following the United stand. But yeah, jump onto Bases to see his content, which is very good. If you want to follow me, then you can do so at the following @Pugilistboy is the name on every platform. But guys, thank you very much for following. We look forward to seeing you again. Well done, and have a great weekend. Enjoy whatever little action you can get to see. Take care.